What's up, guys? As you can see by that, we're getting ready to do a leak repair on a Lennox system. Factory joint in the unit, your low suction fitting for your true suction line. Let's get it done. Alright guys, we've got a Lennox here. It is completely empty. We found this late yesterday afternoon. Bone dry. This fitting around your true pressure port tube, your cap tube that ties into your true suction here. So you're checking your suction pressure here in heat mode. It's always going to give you a suction pressure. This thing's leaking really bad, blown out around here. So we're just going to replace that with one of these access fittings. Obviously that's not a part you're going to order from a manufacturer. So basically you just they make these in different sizes, different diameters as far as your sizing there. Smaller, they make real small ones. I use these from time to time if I need to tie into a line somewhere and add a place to check refrigerant pressure. Maybe you've got one like that on a package unit, your Schrader core is stuck, you can't get it out, the thing's leaking, and just recover the system. And then I'll take that fitting and I'll just cut it off and then seal it. And then I don't know who this is calling me, but I really don't care at this point. But anyway, and then you can tie that one of these, a smaller ones, not one this large, but a smaller one, back into your line, pop you a hole in there, and braze a new one in, make you a new access fitting. Everybody should know what these are. They're pretty common. Have a lot of uses, but I'm going to use it today to replace this fitting. So typically on these, you're going to come back here. There's always a lock retaining screw or one of these little lock rings that hold those in place. I've already removed it, so we're going to pop this out, and I'm basically just going to replace this section with this new fitting. Get my tubing cutters. Hopefully these are small enough. I have a smaller pair of Lennoxes that actually close real fine, and I can really get in there and put a crease around a real small cap tube and then pop it, and it still have the hole in it where it'll still read pressures. But these are the tubing cutters I use most of the time. Let's see, hopefully this one will go down small enough for me to get on that and cut it, and it will not. So with that said, let me go get the Lennox tubing cutters. Okay, now I have those little smaller Lennox tubing cutters. They get real tight and they help on these smaller pipes if you're trying to cut them. So we're going to go in here and cut it about right there. And yes, I'm going to take some sand cloth to my copper here. Sometimes I sand before, sometimes I sand after. It doesn't really matter as long as you do it and you clean it. But yeah, I like these little tubing cutters. They kind of come in handy. They're small. I wish they had more of a squared handle on it. I mean, the smaller they get, the harder it is sometimes when you're trying to turn them, especially if you've got oil on your fingers. But it'll get there. And there, it's off. So now get some little piece of sand cloth in here somewhere. Right there it is. And clean it up a little bit. You don't have to do a whole lot with it, but you just want to make sure it's clean, and you're going to have a good seal. Which, I mean, this is a small pipe, so it's not really that difficult to to braze that. And then that is just the right size that it will slide right on there. So I'm going to clean this back just a little bit further. I want to get at least a good 1/2 inch of this pipe up inside this fitting, and I've already taken the Schrader out of it. So we're going to put that right there and get this thing brazed on. I mean, fairly simple repair. Now, when I am brazing on anything, whether I'm putting a coil in or a compressor in, I just use my phone to make sure I'm getting you guys a good view, because you don't always know where you're pointing this thing when you're wearing it on your head. But anyway, I always leave my refrigerant hoses hooked up to the system, and then I keep them open, disconnected from the gauges for an open path of airflow, simply because you still have vapor in the system. A lot of people leave the cores in, they take the gauges off, they're putting something in. The hotter you get that thing, if you're doing big pipes and things like that, that vapor pressure is going to start to increase, even if the system's quote unquote empty, and it's going to start wanting to blow back through where you're brazing while that solder is still wet, and you find yourself chasing leaks. So I always leave my hoses hooked to the system, disconnected from my gauges, so that that pressure will release through my hoses and not try to release back through the fittings that I'm trying to braze. So as far as my tanks, typically I kind of go back to what I learned in school, the welding classes, brazing classes that from tech school. It's almost been 20 years now. But you just have to crack your acetylene tank open your oxygen tank, you know, 2 or 3 good turns. This gauge is a little busted. It's not going to really tell me what's in my tank, but I try to set my acetylene and my oxygen. Acetylene is going to be on about 7, and I try to keep my oxygen somewhere around 30. See, it's going to bleed back a little bit. Right in that area, right in there. But we're doing a smaller pipe, so I don't need a lot of heat on this. And this gauge wants to bleed over. I need to replace my oxygen regulators. But typically 7 and 30, and then I can adjust my heat from here. I turn the oxygen on a little bit, a little acetylene on, and then I light it like that. That way, if you're inside a house in a closet area or something, and you just light your acetylene first by itself, you get all those little black soot dingleberries floating around. They stick to the wall and they stick to everything. So if you turn your torches on, just a little bit of acetylene, a little bit of oxygen, and light them, you don't have that problem. And that's about all I'm going to need for this little venture. Of course, we're going to have to do the filter dryer as well. And you see where it's located at, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that here in a minute. And we're going to go ahead and get this done first. And that is done. Next, we got to get that dryer changed. So Lennox really didn't do anybody any favors with this system. They make this access panel that goes back in here. Not enough room, so I typically am just going to pull the whole corner out of this thing and get started. But they didn't do any favors with this stuff, with their design. typically like to cut a TXV out or a filter dryer out, but everything in here is so tight, I'm gonna have to sweat it out, and then you try not to hit your knobs. So let's come up here from the top. We'll try to do this without burning up this TXV. So that's out of the way, and then I typically will run some water on that TXV. Be careful not to get any water in your pipes, but I just cool it down real quick. And that pretty much takes care of that. Now we've got to get the bottom done. Back that oxygen down just a hair. Now getting the bottom of this thing is tight, but move a couple of these pipes and fittings out of the way, and just trying to get back in there with your torches is kind of difficult. So I've got this little clamp down here that holds that pipe down to the bottom. We're going to take that out. And I really got to work on getting this thing squared away. But anyway, so I'm going to raise this up a little bit, and then I'm going to take this dryer and I'm going to bend that back a little bit. See what I'm talking about? There's not a lot of room to get in here without bumping your knobs on something. I swear I wish they would just put the filter dryer in the box when they send the system and just field install it on the outdoor unit, so you don't have to do this crap every time you have to do a repair. So anyway, we got that out, and it's just a habit to me that when I'm working, I always crank my valves out and bleed my hoses till I'm ready to do them again. Just a safety thing for me. Close everything up, try not to drop it in the mud. But anyway, that's the old dryer. So then this is the old piece that we cut out. So now I got to get that dryer put back in there and get this thing ready to get back up and running. All right guys, getting this dryer put in. I've done the bottom already. I was having to get in here at odd angles trying to get the bottom of that thing raised back in, and my camera kept bumping against the coil and spinning around, so I just decided I would go ahead and just do that real quick. and then come back in. We'll do the top real quick, reconnect that back with the expansion valve. And I really need a new oxygen regulator. There we go. Let's see what I'm talking about. Everything in here is so fucking tight. When you're trying to do stuff, I guess I need to maybe get a longer tip. And I don't know how much of this you can actually see. Probably none of it, but maybe that's a little better. So there was enough solder still on the end of that piece there that I could get it to open up, slide in, and lock. And we're going to braze it in real quick. That came apart. So I might have to put some more tension on it or something. Hold it. There we go with that. And then get that out of the way. Run some water across that. Keep it cooled down. Alright, went and filled up my water bottle real quick. So to keep that from popping back out again, I'm just going to bend this solder a little bit so I can get an angle on it. Then I'm going to put the palm of my hand, bend it a little bit too much, right on the top of these capillary tubes right here. You see what I'm doing. Then I'm going to heat this back up and hit it with the solder so it doesn't pop back out on me again. It's probably sealed. There was enough solder on it to begin with. We'll run it around the back a little bit. Good seal back there. Around this side. Good seal. And then we'll hit this thing one more time with some water. Keep it from overheating. Now I know you guys don't like the idea of the water, but I've done it 1,000 times. I don't like using the paste and all that crap that makes a mess and sticks to everything. But obviously water runs downhill, so I'm always going to do my bottom joints first and work my way up. Water there, come back here, water there. That way when I'm cooling this one, there's not an open fitting down here because I've already closed it up. So I work from the bottom up when I do that. And the water's always handy. See, there's the camera bumping the unit, but what I do is keep that bottle of water typically pretty handy. When I'm brazing, there's always a bottle there. Sometimes I'll take the top and drill a hole in it and make a squirt gun out of it where I can squirt from the side if I need to make an angle with it. But I mean, I immediately, as I'm brazing, I'll cool everything down. If I'm doing a reversing valve, I'm cooling down one fitting at a time as I'm doing it. I've never had a problem with it. I'm not getting any water in anything because I'm paying attention to what I'm doing. But anyway, we've got the dryer in. We have our leak issue fixed. Now we're going to put this thing back together and get a vacuum pulled on it. Check it with pressure and charge it back up, pull a vacuum, that kind of thing. Alright guys, so as you can see, we've got everything put back together. Got the vacuum pump, hoses and everything hooked up, getting ready to start the vacuum on it. Yes, I'm just going to use my manifolds on this. I do use a one hose setup from time to time. My gauges work just as well. I make sure I keep my O-rings replaced and everything cleaned. So my vacuums are just fine. I use a Robin Air 2-stage 5 CFM pump right there. It's always worked good for me. I don't see the sense in spending a bunch of money on something fancy when there are things that do just as good a job. I don't need the big field piece pump with the damn oil containers on it and all that. This has always worked good for me. I keep 2 of them. They work great. So anyway, didn't have my drop cord with me, so as you can see, I'm using the Widowmaker right here. They call it that for a reason. I did do a modification to mine. If you look right here, I did cut that and put stake-ons on there, so I can either clip it to the contactor or my high voltage, or I can actually just open it here and plug it to the contactor. So I can use it in 2 different scenarios. I'm just going to have it hooked up there. I kind of tuck it away to get the slack off of it, so it's not pulling, you know, against anything here to come loose. The weight's being held down here where I have it sitting, so this is all slack. None of these are being pulled on. They're all on there tight, so they should stay there until we're finished. And yeah, I went ahead and put everything back together. No video of me taking the unit apart or putting it back together, because I think we've all seen enough videos of people taking 50, 60 screws out of a unit and burning up 8, 9, 10 minutes of video time. And this thing has 4 screws on every corner, 2 on each side. That's Lennox. They overdo things. A bunch of 1/4-inch screws. You didn't need to see video of that. So I'm gonna get this vacuum started, and then we will take it from there, gentlemen. Get power on in here. Get this thing on. Open everything up. And I know I'm not going to record 30 minutes of me pulling a vacuum on a system, so, or 20 minutes with a one hose. We're going to let this thing pull. I'm going to run across the street, get a quick bite to eat, and we will resume this next. Alright guys, I've got this thing vacuumed down. I got it down to about 435 microns. Did a decay test. It stabilized out at about 470. It stayed there. Let it sit there for about 15 minutes. So it's holding the vacuum. I'm going to weigh this charge in. All these houses in this neighborhood, these units are, both the air handlers are in the attic. We got about a 40-foot line set on this. So we got 5 pounds, 10 ounces in the factory charge in the outdoor unit. Based on my length of line set, I'm coming up with 0.6 ounces per foot, which is 6 ounces for every 10. 40 foot of line sets, 24 ounces, which is 1 pound, 8 ounces. And then I add that up, and I always put it on my door, 7 pounds, 2 ounces. I may have to tweak the subcooling on it. These units have really, if you look at these charts, odd subcoolings on these things. You can go anywhere between, based on what your air handler matchup is, your outdoor unit, which this is going to be a PX 030 2.5 ton outdoor unit. And then based on whatever air handler you've got up there, you could run anywhere from a 3-degree subcooling all the way up to a 16. So it's kind of a wide range. But we do have a TXV upstairs, so I'm going to set this subcooling. And based on the air handler model we have upstairs, I'm going to be looking at about 8 degrees of subcooling on this particular unit. So I'll start weighing in this charge. And yes, I bled my hose out before I opened that up. Got some old school scales over here. And they've always worked well. A little heavy, but this doesn't work anymore. I used to be able to stop and go on this thing where it would take in. I could set it where I want it. But anyway, so I'm not going to weigh the whole charge in while you're sitting here, but I'm going to weigh in my 7 pounds 2 ounces, and then we'll be back. Alright guys, we got this unit back up and running. I don't know how well you can see that, but I am using the manifold hooked up to this as well. Subcooling starting to come on up. Get that up to about 8 degrees. If you can see that any better, I don't know. Maybe you can see that a little closer. There we go. So right now it's about 70 degrees inside the house. It's 75 outside. We're running about a 120 and a 262 with a 16 superheat and a 6 degree subcool. I'm gonna try to get that up to about 8 degrees on my subcool, and I'll run up there real quick, check that temperature split, put a few more ounces in there, try to tweak that in from what I measured. But we've got this system fixed, and that's just a day in the life, guys. And with Lennox, it's a lot of leak repairs. You get a lot of practice. You know, they make sure the top of this unit with all these damn screws ain't gonna fly off in a hurricane, but they can't keep it from leaking. And this unit is what? Just turned 7, so it is what it is. But thanks for watching, guys. Like, subscribe, please subscribe, that helps. Hit the like button. Remember to give away at 1,000 subscribers. Probably gonna be a veto bag, more than likely. Something I can order and just drop ship to where it needs to go. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Enjoy and have a good week at work.